Hey guys, so today I am doing my June and July wrap up, and within the 2 months I managed to read 11 books and I only read 1 book in June. So July was an incredible reading month for me. I think this is the most I've ever read in a month that I can remember. Like, I didn't really start tracking it until maybe 2 years ago, but I remember reading 8 books a month, and that was like insane for me because I usually read like 4 books a month and that's a good month. So 10 books was insane. So I will start with the book that I read in June, and that is Switched by Amanda Hocking. This is a reread for me. I read this 3 or 4 years ago. It was a really long time ago, and I just remembered reading each book in the series within a day. I was in a really big reading slump, and I'd read something that I know I liked that I remember reading really quickly that wasn't a contemporary, because I always read contemporary because I just read them really fast and I always enjoy them, but I just wanted something different. I had originally given this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 again. I really liked it still. It's not like incredible literature or anything. Like, I don't think that the writing is particularly great or anything, but I think it's really, really fun. There were definitely things that I noticed in this that I was like, oh, I don't like that much, that I didn't notice the first time around. And there's a love triangle in this series, and I actually switched who I liked this time. The first time I read it, I really loved both Finn and Loki, but I just preferred Finn slightly more. This time around, again, I love them both so much, but I just preferred Loki a little bit more. This is a trilogy about Trill, which are a tribe of trolls, and they aren't like the typical trolls, like short, hairy, like live under a bridge type things. They resemble humans, but they have magical abilities. And Wendy, who is the main character, was a changeling, so she was switched out for a human baby, and then a boy named Finn comes to her school and she's really intrigued by him, and he is a tracker for the Trill, and so he's there to take her back to her people. So the first book that I read in July is Torn by Amanda Hocking. This is the second book, and I originally gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 again. I think I do like the first book more. The second book I read is Ascend by Amanda Hocking. This is the final book in the trilogy, and I originally gave it a 5 out of 5, and I think I gave it a 5 out of 5 again. I really like this book, except for I don't love the ending. It's basically just the epilogue that I don't love. The next book that I read is Frostfire by Amanda Hocking, and this is a spin-off series from the Trill series. This is the Canon Chronicles, and Canon are another tribe of trolls. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I definitely did not like this book as much as the Trill series. I just didn't find it as entertaining, but I did feel like the writing had improved. This is about a girl that lives in the Canon tribe, so she's not a changeling or anything. She knows where she comes from, and she is a tracker, so she goes out and she collects the changelings and things like that, and while she's tracking someone, notices that something is off, and it ends up being this man where she has a history with, and he's like not a good guy, and so the whole thing is her kind of battling with him. Although I didn't like it as much as the Trill series, I'm definitely still going to continue on with this series. The next book that I read is the first book that I read for the Booktubeathon, and that is Summer Days and Summer Nights, edited by Stephanie Perkins. And I'm not going to say too much because I've already had a Booktubeathon wrap up, which I'll link down below if you want to hear a little bit more depth about these books. But I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. There were some stories that I absolutely loved and some that I didn't love as much, which always comes with a short story bind up. The next book that I read is The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight by Jennifer E. Smith. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, but I think it's more of a 4.5. This is super duper cute and a super fast read, and this is about a girl that has to fly out to London for her father's wedding, and she's very upset about having to go because she doesn't agree with her father getting remarried. And while in the airport, she meets this beautiful boy that is also flying into London because that is where he's from, and they end up sitting next to each other on the plane and just like strike up this conversation, and they definitely have a connection, and it's really fun. The next book that I read is The Peculiar Haunting of Thelma B by Erin Petty, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's super fun. This is about a little girl, and she ends up being haunted, and the whole book is about her trying to figure out why and who's doing it. If you like R.L. Stein and you like Goosebumps and The Haunting Hour and things like that, then I think that you would definitely like this. The next book I read is Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac by Gabrielle Zevin, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is about a girl that is in high school, and one day she falls down the stairs at her high school and she hits her head and ends up becoming an amnesiac. And there's this boy James that finds her, and he rides in the ambulance with her. When she wakes up, obviously she doesn't remember anything, so when she sees him, she thinks that he's her boyfriend, and she ends up being really intrigued by him and wondering why he was there. It's just about her trying to figure out her life again and figure out what's happened in the past 4 years, because that's as much as she doesn't remember, and it's just a really, really good read. The next book I read is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews, and I give this 4 out of 5 stars again. I really, really enjoyed it. This is the funniest book I've ever read. The humor in this I feel like not everyone will really love, but for me, I just thought it was hilarious. It really clicked with me. And this is about a boy named Greg, and he's not a particularly likable character, which is something I usually struggle with, but for some reason it worked in this. And him and his friend all make movies or short films. But one day this girl, Rachel, who used to be friends with Greg, she's diagnosed with leukemia, and so his mother makes him call her and ask her to hang out, and she really doesn't want to hang out with him, but his mother is very persistent that he hangs out with her. So he ends up having to hang out with her, and they kind of become friends, but he doesn't really realize how much he cares about her at first. So it's not like a really sad book. Obviously it is sad because this girl has leukemia, but it's not told in a sad way. The next book that I read is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and I gave this a 4 to 5 stars. I liked it a lot. I'm sure you guys know what Peter Pan is about, so I don't really have to say what it's about, but if you're a fan of Peter Pan, if you like the movie, then you should definitely check this out. It's super fun and magical. And then the last book I read is November 9 by Colleen Hoover, and I gave this a 4 to 5 stars, but it's definitely a 4.5 out of 5. I really liked it. It's not my favorite Colleen Hoover book, but I still really did enjoy it. This book has a lot of mixed reviews, and I can definitely see where a lot of people don't like it. The main character is Ben. He is a little hard to like at some points. He does things where you're like, whoa, like that's not okay. But I still loved the book overall anyway. I really loved the main girl character. And this book is about a girl named Fallon, and she is an up-and-coming actress, and then one day she is involved in a house fire and ends up having burns down her face and her body, and so she loses her job because she doesn't look the way that they want her to look. She loses all of her self-confidence, and she's in a really low place. And her father was her acting coach, and he really doesn't give her any sympathy. And one day she's out to lunch with him to tell him that she's moving to New York City because she wants to pursue Broadway, and he totally shoots down her dreams and just tells her that it's not possible. And so then our main boy Ben overhears it and steps in, and so the father leaves, and then they end up just wanting to get to know each other more and spend the day together, and they do that, and then she has to move to New York that night. So what they end up doing is just meeting every day on November 9th, which is the day that they met. And so all of this book is just November 9th. When I first picked up this book, I wasn't positive if I was going to like it, just because it is about a girl that is involved in a house fire. And I have personal experience with that. I was in a house fire, and it was the most terrifying experience of my life. So when I first started reading it and found out that that's what it was about, I really didn't know if I was going to be able to continue, but it was about more of the aftermath instead of that night. So that's why it was definitely easier for me to read this. So yeah, if you like Colleen Hoover, then I would definitely suggest checking it out. So those are all the books that I read in June and July. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you read, and I hope you like this video, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!